Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Today I'm gonna show you how to make cassava flour. It is very simple, anyone can do it. To make the cassava flour, you're gonna need cassava. You can use any variety of cassava. This is the one that is readily available to us. It is the product of that red stem cassava. So the first thing you're going to do is to peel the cassava. If you don't know how to peel cassava, it is quite easy. If you know how to peel yam, you can peel cassava. And it is a little bit different from yam because it has a very thick, leathery skin. So what you do is to break through it, then use the knife to separate the skin from the cassava. The inside of the cassava is usually white, so after peeling off the skin, you can scrape off any discoloration. So if this is your first time on my channel or you are a returning viewer and you are not yet subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel by clicking on the subscribe button and on the notification bell so that you can get an alert whenever I post a video. Like and share this video. Thank you and God bless you. As you can see, it is very easy to peel cassava. But if this method is too difficult for you, let me show you another way to do it. Like I said at the beginning, peeling of cassava is like peeling of yam. This is actually how yam is peeled. So you can still peel your cassava the same way. While I am peeling the cassava, let me use this time to send a very special shout out to all those that have subscribed. You guys are the best. I love you. Thank you and God bless you. After peeling the cassava, I'm gonna rinse it before cutting it into very small sizes. So I'm gonna be using a box grater to slice them into very tiny pieces so that they can dry easily. You can use a food processor or anything that can cut it into very tiny pieces. You could also do it with a knife. I'm going to show you how to slice it with a knife also. It is very different from the way they do it in Nigeria and I guess in Africa. So what they normally do after peeling the cassava, they can cut or break the cassava into smaller chunks, then just spread them out under the sun to dry for weeks and even months. But where I am living right now, I cannot do that. So it is easier for me to slice them into very tiny pieces so that I can dry them indoors, or I could even put them outdoors and they will be dried within a few days if the sun is very hot. So if you're using a knife, just try to slice them as thinly as possible, just the way you would slice potato when you want to make potato chips or plantain when you want to make bakery. So all done, it is time to spread them out for drying. I'm going to show you two ways to dry your cassava. So in case you don't have wire rack to spread out your cassava, you can get a piece of foil, crumble it, then stretch it out. And by the time you stretch it out, it's not going to go back to the original state. It is going to develop ridges, and those ridges are going to help to suspend the cassava so that they don't just lay flat. Instead, there will be an even flow of air in between, and it's going to help to dry the cassava. I know the height of the ridges may not be much, but it works. Like I said earlier, I'm going to show you two ways to dry your cassava. The first way is using your oven. If you have a dehydrator, you can use that. I don't have a dehydrator. I normally use my oven. So you can use your oven to dry whatever you want to dry, or you can invest in a dehydrator if you can afford it. It is not too pricey, but I just think it is unnecessary if I can use the oven to do it. So you're gonna set your oven between 150 degrees Fahrenheit to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. So any temperature less than 200 is good. You can convert it to Celsius, and I think it is between 60 to 80 degrees Celsius. Before spreading the cassava out on the rack, I like to preheat the oven because I believe it gives it a head start so that when it gets in, it starts drying up. This is 2 hours 30 minutes later. It is perfectly dried. Depending on the temperature of your oven, you could go up to maybe 3 hours. As you can see, the cassava dried very quickly because I sliced them very thinly. So I'm just gonna leave them on the rack to cool down, then bag them afterwards or blend them. So for the second method, I will still use the oven because I am air drying it. It is totally optional if you want to sun dry it. I normally do that so that it removes any moisture that could promote mold growth. So I'm gonna put it in the oven, the same temperature, for about 30 minutes to an hour. Then I will remove it from the oven and let it continue to air dry indoors until it is properly dried. So let me just say this. It is better to sun dry it if you can. If you're living in a very humid place, excellent. If your environment permits you, good. But where I live right now, it is not conducive to do that because of two things. It is an apartment and we have some cats that they let loose sometimes. I don't want them to get into my food. As long as it is getting enough air, between 4 to 5 days, it should be properly dried. So this is 5 days later. It has dried up properly. Look at the way it snaps. That tells you that it is well dried. So let me show you a side-by-side comparison of the final product of both methods. The first thing you're gonna notice is the color. The oven dried cassava has a darker color, while the air dried or maybe sun dried cassava has a very whitish color. So when you are trying to choose which method you want to use, think about the end product, if you want a whiter flour or a darker flour. So I'm going to blend them separately so that you can see the difference in the flour. I am starting with the air dried cassava, which is the whitish one. Then I'm going to do the other one, then compare both of them. After blending it, I'm going to sift it with a sifter. And I am using a sifter that has the finest wire mesh. Though it is double layered, the bottom part doesn't really have any effect. I think it's just for reinforcement. In case you're wondering why sift it when it already looks like flour. Yeah, it looks like flour, but it is not perfectly blended. It still has some grainy parts that you have to blend multiple times. Even when you take it to a commercial engine, they grind it multiple times so that you can get the perfect flour. As you can see, there's a difference between the flour in the bowl and the one in the sifter. So I'm going to continue to blend and sift until everything turns to smooth flour. When I'm done blending and sifting this batch, I'm going to do the other batch, which is the oven dried cassava. This last part, I'm just going to add it to the other batch to save time and energy. So I'm just repeating the same thing I did the first time. Do you know that there is a difference between cassava flour and cassava starch? I have a video on how to make cassava starch, which is the same as tapioca starch. I'm gonna leave the link in the description box. You can check it out later if you're interested. After blending and sifting for a while, this is what is left of it. I'm gonna toss it, but if you want to continue, feel free. So these are the two batches of the cassava flour. As you can see, one is whiter than the other. The main difference there is just really the color. And of course, the oven dried one is cooked. This is a close-up of what they look like. Maybe you can tell the difference better. Personally, I don't think that the shade of your cassava flour is gonna affect whatever you want to use it for. In fact, I'm gonna mix mine together. When I'm done, I'm gonna store it in a Ziploc bag. You can store it in any airtight container. I like to label my flour so that there will be no mix up with the other white flour. So now that you know how to make cassava flour, why don't you give it a try? It is very easy and it has a very versatile use. Cassava flour in many African countries can be used in making fufu, akpu, or some form of swallow, even danwake. It is also used for baking bread and some other baked goods, and it is commonly used as a thickener. Whenever you see tapioca flour on that label, know that they are referring to cassava flour. So, thank you guys for watching. Till I see you next time. Stay safe, stay blessed. I love you. Bye.